So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need the resolve to resist. Hey, thanks for watching our live stream. I'm the host, David Crayden. In the meantime, have a look at some of these clips and take the opportunity, please, to like this broadcast, ring the bell, or subscribe.
And we're stepping up in every way we can because we know that Russia must win this war. That Ukraine must win this war.
But freedom is something you earn every day.
I don't know that the government currently has fiscal anchors.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden, and I'm broadcasting to you live from Ottawa. Happy Friday. I hope it's a happy Friday for Universal Ostrich Farms. We've been following this story since May. That's 5 months now. 5 months. May the 2nd was my first interview with Katie at the farm, and it's been 5 months. Today is perhaps a very historic day, and we'll be back with more about that in a minute. But instead of our usual intro, I want to show you this. This is a work of brilliance by this individual, and we credit her in this. It's fantastic. We had to take out the original music because, play the Beatles and you'll get copyright problems. But I can't say enough about this, and I hope Katie sees this as she's waking up this morning, because we'll be talking to her later. But I hope she sees this, because this is inspiration coming from people who just want to help.
All you need is love.
Yeah, and that of course was Robin Wanders. Fantastic. Thank you, Robin, that we showed this on YouTube this morning. We've reposted your original creation on X, sent it to Katie this morning. I hope she sees that this morning. And like I said, so what's the day look like here? We got lots of time, because I don't have a lot of videos for you. It's going to be a shorter than usual broadcast, because I'm expecting to do a second broadcast today at 12 noon Eastern time with Katie, and I'm hoping our good friend David Freiheit, otherwise known as Viva Fry, can join the show, but he's got logistic issues today. Wanted to have Drea Humphrey on with Katie, but she's got issues going on today with interviews that she has to do, so might not be able to do that at noon today. But Katie has agreed to come on again, and I think this is probably the 8th or 9th time we've had Katie on the show, and I'll have Katie on the show every day of the week if I have to, until we drum some sense into this federal government over this incredible intrusion into people's lives. And forgive me for going on far too much at the beginning here, perhaps, but this is what this has been from the beginning for me. This is why I started covering the story in May, when virtually nobody else wanted to talk about it, or didn't know about it, or thought it was just about some farm out in BC. And once again, I credit those who have. Rebel News has been fantastic in their coverage, and they're there on scene today, which is better than I am. I should be on scene today. I thank people like Mark Nixon, who have done work on this file, but most of all, Viva Fry. Viva Fry has done incredible work on this file. And I think he has highlighted this issue for a lot of Americans because, of course, he's down in Florida now. And he has a largely, I think, U.S. audience watching him on Rumble. I think most of the Canadians are still watching him on YouTube, but he's got a huge bilateral audience, a cross-border audience, and he's reached a lot of people. And thank you, David, for the work you've done in this. And I hope you're able to come on the show later. If you're not, we'll talk to you again because we know, we love your work here because you're an honest lawyer and you're an honest journalist and you're an honest man. We love the work you're doing. And this is what interested me in this whole story from the very beginning. It was because it was a farm that said, hey, this is not just about our 399 ostriches. It's about the fact the government thinks it owns those 399 ostriches, even though they're healthy, and thinks it can kill them and destroy our livelihood, destroy our lives, destroy our farm, all because the policy says so. And this is what's wrong with Canada today, is that we are so stuck in a groove. Some of you won't remember old records, okay? Some of you don't even remember CDs because it's all it's all digital now. We don't even see the music we play. But in the old days, when you played a 33 and a third record or a 45, sometimes the record would get a scratch and the needle of the record player would get stuck in that groove. And that's exactly how the Liberal government is today. That's how Canada is today. And that's how the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, is. It has gotten stuck in a groove. It doesn't think it has to assess or analyze its policies because that's what we do. Those birds were sick last December. Kill them all. Stamp them out. And that's the policy. And where's the policy coming from? The World Health Organization and its subsidiaries. This is what's so frightening about this decision. And it could come today. I can't tell you, I worked in government for years. As many of you know, I've shared this with you in the past. I was a public affairs officer in the Canadian Air Force. And when I worked in Ottawa at National Defense Headquarters at 101 Colonel By Drive, we used to call it Disneyland on the Rideau Canal. We would wait until Friday afternoon to release anything negative, any bad news, Friday afternoon, because we believed the media would miss it. And of course, the public affairs officers in uniform weren't saying, yeah, let's release it as late as possible on Friday afternoon so nobody sees it. It was the government, the minister's office, and regardless of it being conservative or liberal, they all felt the same way. Wait until Friday afternoon and nobody's going to notice. And of course, other government departments were all the same. Because they're still like that today, because it's like the technology hasn't caught up with the communications tactics. They still think that the news organizations shut down on Friday afternoon. All the reporters go out for drinks and it's over till Monday. Well, of course, that's not how the news operates anymore. It's 24/7. So you can release a bad news story on Friday afternoon, and I guarantee it will be on the front page of the newspaper, on the radio, on the television, and most of all, on internet that night. Never mind Saturday morning. It'll be on there that night. But the mentality persists amongst the bureaucratic deep state in Canada that somehow journalists all shut down over the weekend and go home. Maybe it was like that in the 1980s. It's not like that anymore. And so if the Supreme Court thinks they can release this bad news, if it's bad news, on Friday afternoon and get away with it, they can't. I'm hoping and praying the Supreme Court, here's an alternate vision of the future. I'm hoping the Supreme Court actually did think about this and said, hey, we are not here because liberals appointed us, even though they are. But these judges need to say, we are here to represent what's best for Canada, what's best for the Canadian people. And I'm hoping and praying they say, look at the situation here in Edgewood, BC, with this universal ostrich farms. What's best for Canadians? To say that Canada makes its food policy, and that's almost ridiculous because these ostriches were not going to be used for food. Canada makes its agricultural policy, its health policy in Canada. Canada first, not what the globalist entities, the United Nations, the WEF, are telling us to do. Let's do it ourselves. Let's make a Canadian solution, which is allow this farm to continue to operate as is, because these ostriches pose no danger to public health. None at all. The CFIA knows that. That's why they don't want to test them, and they won't let the farm test them. It's as clear as glass. And yet, there's still people in the media who say, "Oh, it's science. Science is dictating this. Science is behind the stamp out policy, which means you find one sick bird, you kill them all." That's not scientific. That's stupidity. And that, of course, is what rules our federal government at times. But I'll have more to say about this in a minute. Let's have a look at the latest video about what happened yesterday, because I had a great news conference with John Cassidy, who is a New York billionaire. He ran for mayor of New York at one point. He's a good friend, very old friend of Donald Trump. So I hope, John, call Donald Trump up today and say, Donald, this is a very big issue. Tell Mark Carney to just stop the idiocy. But here's a bit of the news conference yesterday from Universal Ostrich Farm, thanks to a report from Global News here.
The pain is very real, watching these animals be traumatized and stressed, not being fed adequately. They're not being handled properly, inhumanely. We are not allowed to go near them. So we've been pushed out of our pens, and we're just watching all of this happen. These animals are looking to us for safety. They're looking to us for help, and we can't help them. Instead of being recognized for their strength and their health, which they are a living vault of immunity with a renewable source of antibody, life-saving antibodies for our children and our grandchildren. Instead, we're having the fear of being killed without mercy, fear of a decision that made not on truth or testing, but just speculation. It's just in their policy. Based off suspicion, they can kill every animal you own on your farm, including your cats, your dogs, your exotic birds, and everything that you have based off of suspicion. So they're acting in the fact that they don't need to test these animals because they suspect that they have one of the most virulent threats due to 2 PCR tests taken in December of last year.
And all I'm asking for the Supreme Court of Canada to do the common sense solution. Allow the FDA to test the animals. If Canada doesn't want the animals, allow Dr. Oz to take them to the United States. What is wrong with that? I mean, enough with the lies. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police are a great force. They have more important things to do. They should be out. Let them go out and get the drug dealers that are hurting our children in both the United States and Canada.
It took a long time, a lot of months, just to have any leadership real leadership in Canada step up. Our politicians have been silent. We've had Jordan Keeley from MLA Peace River. We've had Tara Armstrong and Dallas Brody, and then we've had Scott Anderson, MP Scott Anderson, who's just been absolutely instrumental in trying to be a driving force to get this heard in the House. Leadership, we should not have been able to garner more attention and more support internationally from the government and the Trump administration than our own government. It would be nice to see the real topics that are affecting real Canadians, that are going to have ripple effects for generations to come, be on the agenda and the discussion of leaders like Pierre Poilievre. So out of this, I would like to see something happen before we make one of the biggest mistakes in Canadian history.
You have a lot of connections to a lot of powerful politicians here in Canada. What have your conversations been like in recent weeks with some of them, whether it's Doug Ford, Danielle Smith, Stephen Harper? What are you saying to them about this? Are you hoping that they speak out as well?
They're all in the loop, and I hope they speak out, but it's up to them. I'm not going to push them in any way direction. I just want peace and love between United States and Canada.
Yes, well, peace and love between the United States and Canada. We're not too close to that right now, but John, you know Donald Trump, and I implore you to say something to Donald Trump today, because that's the easiest way to resolve the situation. The political solution is the easiest way. I don't know if the judicial solution is the easiest way right now, because we'll see. I'm not going to say anything to compromise that decision today. I am hopeful Supreme Court will see reason, will see rationality, will see science, and not what the CFIA is sending them. And that's what the CFIA sent up in the appeals court. It's a pack of lies. It's nothing but nonsense. And we have to fight back against that. And you saw Katie there. She's very emotional about this because she's losing not just livestock, but these are animals she's cared for, she's nursed, she has looked after. And right now they're not even allowed to feed them. God only knows what the CFIA, a horrible organization, a death squad organization, is doing right now. And this is what is so frightening about this is that ordinary Canadians have been shut off from what's happening. And thank God we've got people like Drea Humphrey and Rebel News on the scene today, and all those supporters. And God knows I should be on the scene today instead of just reporting from Ottawa about things, because this has been a very decisive issue for me in terms of where this country is going. And it's going to hell if we continue to allow this to happen. Can Mark Carney be moved? You bet. One phone call from Donald Trump and he'll be moved. And suddenly it will be just so damn obvious why these ostriches need to be saved. That's how politics works, especially in this country. Here's a little more footage from the area. Yeah, so that is where we're at with the ostriches right now. We've got a murder pen set up by the CFIA. They don't want the world, or certainly not Canadians, to see what kind of work they actually do. And from what I have gathered, these are not bureaucrats, faceless bureaucrats. They're faceless killers who are killing birds across the country and other animals that they deem to be sick. Because the globalist agenda says kill your ostriches, kill your chickens, kill your cows, kill your pigs. That's what this is all about. And this is horrifying that we have come to this in this country. It's absolutely horrifying. But that's exactly where we have come. So where do we stand? I'll say it again. If you tuned in late, I'll be back again, hopefully, if all goes well. But we're living in absolute chaos at that farm. The plan is to come back at 12 noon Eastern time, 9 o'clock Pacific time. Katie will be on the show. I'm also hoping Viva Fry will be on the show. And we will go with that. I might have to record the interview if things get crazy on the farm today. We just don't know what's going to happen. So I caution you, if I've planned to put the show on live at noon, we'll see what happens. If I can't do it live, I'll record it. I'll record the interview and put it on later in the day. So that's the plan right now. But this could change at any time because we have a government that is intent upon absolutely destroying agriculture in this country and absolutely abrogating private property rights. You know, even if you say we don't specifically spell out private property rights in the Constitution, which of course I think is a gift, or shall we say a curse, from then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who was basically, as a youth, a communist. And I don't exaggerate when I say that. As a youth, he was a communist. And I think his idea that everybody shouldn't have private property, just the elites should have their property, was infested in our Constitution because we don't explicitly articulate the right of every Canadian to private property in that Constitution. And our free speech laws are pretty vague as well. That's a recipe ultimately for disaster. And that's exactly where Canada is going right now. So I want to turn now and I'll get back to this before the end of the show. If there's one premier in this province that I say is on the right track, who's doing it properly, who's got the courage to stand down crazy people, to face down the media at times, to say no to people who want to mutilate children, to say no to school boards that want pornography in their libraries for kids as young as 8. It's Danielle Smith, Premier Danielle Smith of Alberta. And as I say, I've known Danielle for over 2 decades. She's a great woman. She's a fantastic leader. And I think she actually leads the conservative movement, small c, conservative movement in Canada in many, many ways. Here she is talking about, well, first of all, let's put this in perspective. She's prepared to go ahead with a pipeline, even though BC is saying no, and Prime Minister Mark Carney is sort of nodding, but no guarantees, nothing in writing. She's moving ahead because she has guts and political courage to do so.
The ambition to make Canada an energy superpower.
But it's Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's energy pitch to Ottawa that is fueling political discussions.
The government of Alberta will be the proponent of an oil pipeline to the Northwest BC coast.
Smith says the Alberta government has no plans to build a pipeline, only to create conditions so a private company will want to, adding she is confident that she can get Ottawa to scrap its tanker ban along the BC coast and its oil and gas emissions cap.
And it is my hope, with Alberta as the proponent, that we will see this pipeline project on the next list of nation-building projects announced by the federal government come Grey Cup in November.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says it doesn't matter what premiers say as much as what the Prime Minister says.
There's only one person who will decide if this pipeline gets built, and it's Mark Carney. So I would encourage you all to ignore provincial politicians who have no authority in this matter.
Poilievre and BC's NDP Premier.
I'm not sure that was necessarily the best response to this issue. Ignore what? We should ignore what Danielle Smith's saying? We should ignore what David Eby's saying. But no, we should not ignore what Danielle Smith's saying. I mean, I think there's been a disconnect here, to be quite honest. Usually the two of them are much more in synchronicity in terms of policy, in terms of especially energy policy. So I'm very surprised he said that in the way he said it. I think that was a misstep by his communications people. And if there's any missteps involved with Poilievre, it's always involving his communications people.
David Eby both acknowledge that there is no private industry interest so far in a new pipeline.
Proposals being advanced from Alberta are just that. They are sketched out on a piece of paper. There is no proponent.
Carney has hinted he would be open to a pipeline if a private proponent was interested, but maintains that carbon capture to offset environmental impacts and Indigenous support are necessary. But getting Eby to accept a pipeline, not an easy task.
It's not just a threat to our pristine coast that so many British Columbians, including myself, value, but it is a direct economic threat.
A new pipeline seems politically popular for Ottawa to pursue, with a recent Leger poll finding nearly half of Canadians believe that new oil and natural gas pipelines are the major projects most likely to have the greatest impact on Canada's economy. Jillian Piper, Global News, Ottawa.
Okay, so I don't think David Eby is going to be easily swayed on this issue. What about Mark Carney? Well, Mark Carney will say anything on any given day to advance his political career. And if there's money in it for Mark Carney, well, he's all for the project. So interestingly enough, of course, as we've seen, most of Mark Carney's investments and most of what Brookfield Assets Management invested in was green energy. So do you think there's any impetus, any desire on Mark Carney's part to be part of this venture? It could be doomed from the start, but let's listen to how, once again, Premier Danielle Smith of Alberta articulates her policy on this.
Cannot let another opportunity of this economic magnitude pass us by again. And that's why we are announcing that the government of Alberta will be the proponent of an oil pipeline to the Northwest BC coast, with the support and technical advice of three major pipeline companies, including Southbow, Enbridge, and Trans Mountain. Our government will make a formal application to the Federal Project Office under the Building Canada Act. Today, we are beginning the engagement process with Indigenous groups across Alberta and British Columbia to ensure that they can be part of this nation-building effort. That conversation must begin with Indigenous engagement, not as a checkbox, but as a foundation for relationship building, trust, and shared leadership. This will lay the groundwork for full and thorough consultation as this project meets regulatory milestones. To be clear, though, this is about more than just fulfilling a legal duty to consult. It's about working together from the beginning to ensure that we get it right this time, informed by Indigenous perspectives and experiences. We also want to have Indigenous partners at the table as owners to participate not only as holders of territory, but as co-owners of a project and an asset that will provide wealth for First Nations for generations. Our Indigenous Relations team, led by Minister Rajan Sawhney, will develop and lead an engagement plan in collaboration with First Nations across both provinces. You'll hear more details about this from the Minister shortly.
Just a pause there. Don't you wish we had a country where we could just all be Canadians? Yes, but Danielle Smith is doing what she needs to do because this is the way Canada is currently established, with all kinds of different sectors opposing each other. And trying to get any job done, any national project done, is murder. because everybody wants a piece of the action. So she's doing what she has to do here. That's the only reason I included that part.
Perfect. And then obviously there's going to be a little bit of pushback here. We already have the premier to the west of us calling this not realistic, essentially a distraction. So how do you plan to deal with some of the opponents to this project, whether it's the premier next door, whether it's some of these indigenous groups, whether it's just activists who don't want a pipeline?
Well, I would say this, that, you know, if we had been able to redraw the map at the founding of Alberta, maybe we would have drawn it with a little bit of British Columbia so that we had a port. Maybe Port of Prince Rupert would have been part of Alberta as opposed to part of British Columbia. But we didn't have the luxury of doing that. Instead, to make sure that we were a country, we built the Trans-Canada Railroad, we built the Trans-Canada Highway. We've partnered with British Columbia to ensure that their natural gas can make it through Alberta, through a pipeline to get to the U.S. market. And we've wanted to make sure that all of the goods that come into British Columbia, into their ports, have free entry and free access through Alberta. That's the deal that we have. I think that coastal provinces have a special obligation to be generous in making sure that we're creating access to ports for all of our products. I know that Alberta shares that view. I have not publicly opposed any project that has been proposed by any of my premierial counterparts. I'm very supportive of any of their aspirations, and we're going to make sure that we can find areas of common ground. I would say about this project in particular, it was approved. It was going to go ahead, and yet a political decision canceled it. So this was a shovel-ready project some 10 years ago, and now it's a matter of seeing with the technical changes, with some of the advancement technology, with some of the things that we know about building to the coast, with some of the new expectations about Indigenous equity ownership. Now we're going to see if we can revitalize that and maybe have a shortcut, because it was ready to go just a short time ago. I'll tell you a couple things. I mean, first of all, let's remember who owns the resource. The resource is about 85% owned by the people of Alberta, and the government of Alberta represents that. And we partner with the private sector through lease agreements to be able to develop our resource. And so what we hear from our partners is that they're not prepared to expand production if they can't get rid of these 9 bad laws, especially the emissions cap, which is really a production cap, and nor can they pledge barrels to a pipeline if the tanker ban is still in effect. So this is the problem that we find ourselves in, is that we as the owner, to try to steward this resource on behalf of our people, have a partner that's not willing to expand because of bad federal laws. So that's one reason. The other reason is I had an opportunity on a trade mission to be in Mexico, and I heard about TC Energy's success in partnering with the Mexican government. They have challenges too down there, but they managed to partner with the Mexican government, where the Mexican government began with the community benefits agreement, the consultation, the permitting process, and the company ended up focusing on the technical aspects of building a pipeline.
So here's Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's dilemma. She's a federalist. She was elected as a federalist politician for a provincial party. Obviously, I mean, it's a moot point. That makes her a federalist, and by conviction, she is, and she says so. But here's her dilemma. The more she outlines Alberta's inability to forge its own destiny, to build a pipeline, the more difficult it is to say that Alberta needs to stay in confederation. So all of this is feeding the separatist desire, the appetite for Alberta independence. And she has been, I would say, brilliant and politically adept at trying to manage these forces within her power. But potentially they could all get out of everybody's control, because Albertans are going to look at this and say, there's no future for us in confederation, because are we going to get the pipeline under Mark Carney? And secondly, will equalization payments ever cease, no matter who the government is? And the answer is no, because Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is committed to continuing equalization as it currently exists. And why? Because he's not just looking for votes in Alberta, which he already has. He's looking for votes in Quebec and Ontario. And that's the politics of the situation. Anyway, we're going to cut it. Actually, let's watch the show, and I'll come back and tell you what's coming up in hopefully less than 2 hours. Yeah, we're back here. I'm sorry. I just had my producer just came in to say we've got some breaking news out of here from my ex post, and I was just trying to get it on here. Here we go. Share the screens. This is the reality of news, folks. Sometimes okay. United we stand. Karen, okay, this is very significant. Karen Esperson, who is Katie Pastiney's mom, and I had a chat with Karen the other day when I was talking to Katie, and her mother dropped by, and Karen from Universal Ostrich Farms receives confirmation that the CFI believes they are bigger than the Supreme Court, and that they are positioning the ostriches to be unalived before an official decision has been made on the livelihood of these beautiful birds. Now let's listen to this.
You are expecting what the outcome is. Okay. Bye.
What was that?
Need to put CFIA exactly where they need to be put, in check. This organization feels that they are greater than the Supreme Court of Canada, that they are still positioning the birds and putting them in the position to be killed immediately. They are assuming they know the outcome of what the Supreme Court of Canada. So are they thinking they're better than Supreme Court, that they're going to for sure win? The Supreme Court has not decided what is happening. We are on a stay order. And yet I just get a phone call that they've got a whole bunch of birds herded in a little circle right in the kill pen waiting. It's animal cruelty. It's anguish to the families. This is terrorism. And this is such disrespect to our Canadian government of justice that this company thinks they're better than the Supreme Court of Canada now. Amen.
Amen.
All right, that is a visceral and important message from Karen Esperson, the co-owner of Universal Ostrich Farms, the mother of Katie Pastiney, who has been on this show multiple times, and she'll be on the show again today. So where are we here? I have been saying this for the last couple of days. The CFIA is behaving like they're above the law, like they define and interpret the law for themselves. They're not subject to the Supreme Court of Canada, the highest court in the land. They act with impunity. They do whatever the hell they please. They are being cruel to these birds. Katie was on the other day describing exactly how cruel they are. And this has to stop. I'm encouraging everybody, media, once again, if you're independent media in British Columbia, get the hell off your ass and go to that farm today if you're close. If you are there as a supporter, be prepared for passive resistance. Be prepared. Don't break the law. I no one encourages you to break the law, but passively resist this arm of authoritarian government. This is when this whole thing began in terms of possibly having a response to the CFIA. I said, if a push comes to shove, you need to have passive resistance, like Gandhi did in India and like Martin Luther King Jr. did in the southern United States to end Jim Crow and apartheid there. That's what we need to do at Edgewood today, if this push comes to shove. But I can tell you this, we need some politician with balls. Maybe it's Pierre Poilievre. I don't know if he has them, but he needs to say stop. He needs to say enough. The CFIA is not a law unto themselves. They need to stop this harassment, this cruelty, and they need to stop pretending that they make the laws, not the Supreme Court of Canada. Do I always agree with judges and judiciary? No, but that's the system we live under. If the CFIA doesn't like that system, well, maybe they should all get elected and go to the House of Commons as MPs. But they're ignoring, they're abrogating the law right now, and that's unacceptable. So this show has gone on longer than I thought. I will be back later today, hopefully at noon. It's chaos right now at the farm because of the way they have been treated by the CFIA and your federal government, our federal government. We'll be back shortly with more. Thanks for watching.